I truly believe this is how wealth management should be practiced.
So it's not all about hitting that next sales target.
The majority of people don't make it in the industry.
I felt like my hands were tied a little bit in how I was able to work with clients.
I was looking for more independence, something that didn't come with constraints on the things that we could do and offer for our clients.
All right, welcome to another episode of Fireside Financial. I'm Joe Curry, along with my co-host, as always, Regan Schiller. How are you, Regan?
Not too bad. And yourself? We were talking just a bit before this, and you had a fairly busy weekend with hockey this past weekend.
Yeah, so I guess my oldest, Louis, had his first kind of real rep hockey tournament, so it was fun. As I mentioned to you, also, I needed to get back to work for a bit of a rest. The kids have a lot of energy, and they kept me up late.
Yeah.
But anyway, sure. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So today, Regan, we're going to talk a little bit about our journeys in this industry, and it's inspired a bit by a recent change that you've made. So maybe you could just share with our listeners what that is.
Yeah. So if you do listen to my YouTube channel or the podcast channel, you might have noticed that I haven't put too much stuff out there this past few months, and that's because we made a change here recently where we joined. I became a partner with Wellington-Altus Private Wealth Management. So we've been going through a transition here this past few months with that, and it's definitely been a lot of work, but well worth it for sure.
Yeah, so it's exciting times, stressful times, I'm sure, for you as well, because you kind of make that move, because obviously communicating with all of your clients and finding out how on board they are with you. But I mean, it really sounds like your clients are definitely full loyalty with you, Regan, because they're making the transition with you, which is awesome. And so with that, if we kind of look back in time a little bit, maybe Regan, you can start off. How did you get into this industry, and where did you get started?
Yeah, so I was, I was very much brought into the industry through School of Hard Knocks, if you will, right? It was about 15 years ago when I started. So the industry was a lot different, you could say. It would be starting the way that I did, I think, today in this industry is be pretty challenging, I believe. But it was very much an introduction to somebody who took a chance on me, I always say, because I had no real industry experience. They said, we'd love to have you on board. And I was like, when can I start? And basically he had told me that, well, you got to go do some courses first and get some education and all that kind of stuff. So after, I guess, doing the minimum to get into the industry, I left my 9-to-5, if you will, and joined into the industry with my previous firm where, again, it was a School of Hard Knocks, but it was good in a sense of you basically had to learn on the job, on the fly, if you will, which again, I said is a good thing. It did keep me on my feet, if you will, working many, many hours at the beginning, building the practice, learning how to do everything, right? And how to communicate with people. And then eventually evolving to figuring out who you work well with and who is your ideal client and building your team and so on and so forth. And then, you kind of get to a point where you're established and mature, and that's when, you get your legs under you, if you will. And it's been a great journey for sure. Yeah. And you're similar, right? Like your background's a bit similar.
Yeah. So I always tell people I really got into this industry when I was still in high school, and that was around the .com crash. My dad came home and he told me that he had a call from a client, elderly widow, and she had just called him to say that he was the reason she could sleep at night. And the reason that's important is my dad is also in this business. Now he's more in group benefits now, but back then he was doing a lot of stuff similar to what we do, Regan. And so I thought that was, to be able to have a job where people think of you like that, I thought that was pretty cool. So fast forward a few years, and eventually when I got my business degree and everything, worked some other jobs. My dad wanted to get me some hard knocks outside of the industry before I joined. And anyway, when I came in, it was similar. So it was almost 15 years ago now, which is hard to believe. And but really at that time, for me, trying to figure out how to make a living in this business, it was really more about actually like life insurance sales. That's really where I started doing a lot more on the life insurance side and working with young families to get them the protection they needed so that, something happened to them, their spouse and their kids were still going to be okay. They could pay off mortgage debt, all that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of the starting point. And then over time, just adding new clients, getting more education around planning, that kind of stuff, really shifting the focus to planning. And the big shift for me was I left my first firm and moved over to another business where became the succession plan. And that
Mhm.
business was really the core was around retirement planning. And so that's where I
Mhm.
really kind of shifted my focus to kind of go all in that on the retirement planning stuff that you and I talk about all the time,
Yeah.
Regan.
Yeah.
And there were clients there that I could really refine that craft with some mentorship from that other advisor who I was working with, my previous partner Randy.
Mhm.
And then from there, I bought him out in 2019, and then made the transition in 20 going back. I think it's 2021. I guess I moved
No.
over to my current investment dealer and current MGA, so insurance side of
Yeah.
the business. And at the end of the day, the big shift and one of the big things that really took me to where I am today, and I'll get you to talk a bit about this in a minute, Regan, is
Mhm.
I went from, I guess, I would think I was still kind of independent at my previous firm, but also there was kind of like there's still a sales culture there.
Mhm.
And it's just there wasn't quite as much independence as I'd like. And doing all the research and everything we've done around planning, I felt like my hands were tied a little bit in how I was able to work with clients. So making that transition in 2021 allowed me to really open things up to be fully independent and work with firms who are, they support that, give you the tools and resources to do planning in the way you feel is best for your clients. Nothing in my compensation tied to how much I sell or anything like that. So
Mhm.
that was really kind of like the final transition that I made, and where we've been really comfortable since. And so
Mhm.
I'll pass that back to you, Regan, because I know you just went through something
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, that was my thing too. So it actually started about a couple years ago, where I started to get approached a little bit more frequently by independent firms. And at this point in my career, I don't think I've really ever looked around. If you like, I never paid attention to other firms and what they were doing or offering, or I was more focused on just the financial planning aspect and wealth management and asset management and all that stuff. So when I did my research and kind of looked, at all these different independent firms, I basically came to the same conclusion: is that I was looking for more independence, something that didn't come with constraints on the things that we could do and offer for our clients. And yeah, a big thing was that not being tied to any type of sales culture whatsoever in wealth management was really big for me, actually, to be, I guess, free of that, if you will. I truly believe that that's how wealth management, like, this is how wealth management should be practiced, is without any compensation tied to sales and things of this nature. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's maybe also worth noting. I mean, so now that you and I have been in this business for a while, Regan, we have that experience, right? But as someone
Mm-hmm.
coming new into the business, like it's really hard to make it if you can, but also like you don't have that experience, right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're lucky that where we're at, we have a lot of that experience. But one of the things I was really excited about, kind of in this new position that I'm in, is as we grow the firm, we're able to now, like, I have another associate planner, an investment advisor that works with us in here, and she's kind of more or less mentoring, apprenticing, I guess, as you will, under me.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than her having to just come in, start giving advice and doing it all on the fly and selling right away, like she'll be able to survive learning and not
Yeah.
getting compensated based on any kind of sales metrics or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like it puts us in a good environment to be able to support that kind of growth in the future. So as the business grows, people aren't being thrown to the wolves. They know they're
Yeah.
always working with someone who has had that experience and that learning and that growth, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
there on a kind of eat what you kill basis, so to speak. Which is, I don't
Yeah.
like saying it like that, but when you first get into the business, if you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah. I know.
sell
It
anything,
is what
then
it is.
you're not going
Yeah.
to still be in the business. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
there's majority of people that start are not here still. So.
Yeah. It's crazy that those stats. I haven't looked at those stats in a while, but I'm sure it's. I know when I started, it was the odds were incredibly low that you'd make it, actually, and that's probably the thing that scared me the most, was that majority of people don't make it in the industry. So I was always looking at, well, the people that did make it in the industry, what did they do? And, well, does I'll do that, but times 10, where I worked relentlessly at the beginning to get it off the ground. But you know, to your point of the culture, I guess, if you will, that's a big thing that I identified with as well with Wellington was in an entrepreneurial type culture like this, we can build the practice how we see fit at the pace that we see fit for the benefit of our clients, right? And that's kind of once you know, I still have quite a bit of work ahead of me with getting everyone's plans back up and running and things like that. But the long term vision is to build that type of culture where you have those succession plans baked into your practice, if you will.
Yeah, and then it's just it's a lot easier to have kind of your own values to drive the decisions you're making in your firm too, right? So it's not all about hitting that next sales target and I mean, and again, you and I have been in the business long enough that we had done well enough that it wasn't like the driving factor anyway at previous firms, but just knowing that that's not even a conversation is kind of nice.
It's just not even in our ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's what I think is important. But, and you know, I've been saying it is what it is. It's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just, you know, if you bought two different vehicles, if you drive a Ford or I don't know, a Kia car of some kind, you're going to have a different experience. It's not right or wrong. It's just different models, I guess. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe just an example or a story that we recently saw. We have a client who had some money still with one of the big five banks, and unfortunately her husband passed away, and so she was trying to get things set up for the estate and whatever, and was trying to talk to somebody at the bank to get help with getting this stuff settled. And she just got passed from one person to the next. She called who was supposed to be her advisor at the bank, and he had not been responding at all. And then finally he called back and just said, "Hey, just so you know, I got your call, but I'm not your advisor anymore because your net worth isn't high enough to work with me.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to talk to somebody else." And then she kind of told him what her net worth was. And he's like, "Oh, well, in that case, if you'd like a second opinion, I'm more than happy to talk to you about all your other investments."
Yeah, because he really cares.
Yeah. And this is someone, her husband had just passed away. She'd been trying multiple times just to talk to somebody about what to do with her accounts, and she could not get an answer from anybody. And from that person's perspective, I mean, that's someone who has like probably some significant targets that they have to meet. And so that's just the way it is. So they don't have time to do the things that you and I would think are just probably common sense, take care of people and do a good job, and everything else will take care of itself. So it's nice to be.
Yeah. Definitely have dealt with many of those circumstances in the past as well, where it's, where the client, not necessarily that something was done wrong by the client, but just to get things done for the client in circumstances like that becomes very challenging in those environments.
Exactly. So
I think it's important for people to understand there is a difference when you look at the independent wealth space compared to like the other large financial institutions that you were mentioning. There is a difference in the way that the person might work with you, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. And it's not to say, I mean, there's good and bad in every space, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. But definitely the circumstances you're in can have an influence on how you're able to do your best work. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if we need to dive any deeper. I just thought with that change you just went through, Regan, people might be wondering, why would you make a change like that? So I thought it'd be worth maybe just having a little chat about it.
Yeah, you betcha. No, I think it's good for our listeners to know. So, but anyways, we'll wrap it up there, Joseph. And until next time, take care.
Take care.